the staff avoided the rude billionaire until the new black waitress dared to face him. He was the nightmare every server prayed not to be assigned. At the Gilded Spoon, a fine dining temple where the clink of silver on crystal carried like a whisper, Victor Blackwell was the name that dropped the room's pulse. Every Tuesday evening, from the moment his polished black rolls eased to the curb, the atmosphere dimmed as if someone had turned down the volume. Voices lowered, laughter cut short, footsteps softened. An unwritten code like a spell passed down through generations of staff was always recited under breath. Don't mud his eyes, don't speak unless asked, never argue. Anyone who slipped broke one of the three. Either vanished, got demoted, or mysteriously found their resignation already signed. The Gilded Spoon wasn't just a restaurant, it was a theater. Each night chandeliers cast a warm, deliberate glow, transforming white-clothed tables into miniature stages where power and wealth played endless scenes. The audience, also the actors, were old-money magnates, tech princes, politicians, and their entourages. Behind the curtain was the staff trained to be elegant ghosts. Light steps, sharp eyes, sealed lips, anticipating needs before they found words. But Tuesdays weren't like other nights. That was the solo act of one man, and every employee became a reluctant spectator. Somewhere behind an invisible velvet curtain, the test for whoever drew table 7 began the moment his car rolled to a stop. Legends whispered in the Gilded Spoon a sommelier once fired on the spot for suggesting wine too smugly. A busboy who spilled a single drop of water on the cloth and left the job that night under the weight of a glance sharp as a knife. No one could prove the stories. Everyone believed them. Victor Blackwell had built his logistics empire on the cold logic of mathematics and the precision of a Swiss watch. His gaunt face, salt and pepper hair, brows drawn like, by ruler, he looked as though carved from angles. In magazines, they praised his discipline of steel. In the Gilded Spoon, they whispered of a wrath that needed no raised voice. That night, Aisha Ross walked into the play without knowing she was about to become a character. A 24-year-old black woman only 2 weeks on the job. She'd learned fast, a wine list as long as a dynasty's genealogy, the rule of 7 forks, the coded placement of knives. But outside the curriculum there were hidden lessons. Tie your hair back for professionalism. Brenda's casual note, eyes on Aisha's natural curls. Soften your voice a little. A co-worker's half-joke, half-order tone. Policing dressed as feedback. Even the half-second too-long glance from security as she crossed the lobby. Suspicion without reason. Suspicion default. For Aisha, the job wasn't a medal, it was a lifeline. Her mother, Elaine, lived with chronic illness. Her sister Maya's tuition loomed. Bills stacked like off-key sheet music. She didn't dream of chandeliers or napkins folded into swans. She dreamed of bank numbers no longer glowing red. That evening, Greg at the front desk swallowed hard when the camera flashed the arrival. "He's here," he told floor manager Mr. Carter, whose lips pressed into an old crack. Veterans suddenly found urgent errands in the cellar or storeroom. New staff discovered cutlery, not shiny enough, needing another polish. The mock lottery backstage at the bar was quick and merciless. The shortest slip landed in Aisha's hand. She didn't flinch, just straightened her apron, checked her hands weren't shaking, and lifted her chin. Carter leaned close, table 7. Victor Blackwell. Just be a machine, fast, clean, not clever, not smart. Don't look him in the eye, do the job and leave. His words were both advice and fear, wearing a face. Brenda smirked. "Sweetheart, remember to keep your tone gentle. VIPs are picky." It sounded like care, but Aisha heard the wire edge of prejudice gentle, for obedient, picky for volatile. She inhaled, nodded politely. Then another casual jab. "Pretty hair, but don't let it fall messy. It's tied just enough, thank you." Aisha's smile was thin. She was used to justifying her presence in every room. The dining room shifted rhythm when Aisha stepped out with the leather-bound menu. Eyes avoided hers when she glanced back. The hallway stretched 7 steps longer. The background music sharpened, or was that her heartbeat? Table 7 sat in a recess overlooking the city candles flickering against the glass in broken gold. Victor Blackwell leaned one hand on his chair, half a glass of scotch before him. He didn't look up when Aisha stopped. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice warm enough to avoid coldness, clear enough not to be called meek. "The Gilded Spoon is honored to serve you. May I?" Her sentence snapped when Victor turned his head. His eyes, cold gray, swept from her name tag to the hem of her apron like a scanner. Not lecherous, not kind, just evaluative. He didn't speak. Silence stretched like an over-tightened string. At the bar, Greg dropped a napkin clip. The tiny clang rang like a church bell. Aisha held his gaze, not defiant, but not bowed. The rule echoed in her head, "Don't look," but it blurred like a fogged sign. "You're new," Victor said. Not asked, stated. "Second week, sir. They let rookies take table 7 now. Standards here must have dropped." The word "dropped" landed heavy. Aisha saw her mother's face, and the hospital bill flash behind her eyes. She smiled barely enough to escape rudeness. "The only standard drop tonight, sir, might be the butter melting on the bread if you order it." The air pulled tight an inch. At the next table, a young server froze mid-step. From afar, Brenda frowned not at Victor but at Aisha. "Don't show attitude." Victor's face stayed stone, but something flickered like a man hearing a note off-key. He set his scotch precisely onto the coaster's faint circle. His voice flat, filet mignon. Medium rare, but closer to rare. If the center's still pink, it goes back. Sauce separate, don't pour, don't touch. And bring me a Petrus 1982. He hadn't opened the menu. Aisha wrote each word steady. She knew exactly what Petrus 82 was. Marco, the sommelier, had spoken of that grape heart in tones half awe, half fear. "Yes, sir. Straight to the kitchen." She stepped back just enough, left at a pace not hurried, not slow, as though the wooden floor had marked her path. Passing the bar, Brenda caught her elbow. "Too bold, sweetheart. With him, don't be smart." Aisha gently freed herself. "I'm just doing my job." The red light of the ceiling camera blinked once. It filed no reports, but Aisha always felt it recorded her more than most. The kitchen door swung like a gust. Chef Tony Alvarez, white cloth slung over his shoulder like a flag, took the order, slip-skimmed and smirked. "Rare, but not pink." "What does he want me to grill it with my eyes?" Aisha repeated exactly, no emphasis. "No edits, sauce separate," she added, and Petrus 82. At the word Petrus, Marco spun, already racing to the cellar, cradle in hand, as if carrying a child. The kitchen flared. Tony seized the cast-iron pan, butter hissed garlic, crushed thyme, seared smoke rising into a hazy halo. Aisha watched hands off, but eyes on every detail. Every millimeter mattered because this wasn't just dinner. It was a test, and the target was her. As the corkscrew's old gear clicked a soft pop, Aisha tightened her apron strings. The performance had entered its next act. Marco returned with the 1982 Petrus, wrapped in a white cloth like a heart being kept warm. He set the bottle onto the cradle, tilting the label toward Aisha, a double-check ritual leaving no excuse for claims of mistake. "This is liquid prayer," he muttered, eyes a mix of fear and reverence. Aisha nodded, not smiling. She knew one slip in the wine ritual could turn the night into tragedy. At the counter, Greg's eyes skimmed over Aisha, then deliberately lingered on the curl tucked behind her ear. His voice carried a pointed reminder, "Pretty, but keep it neat. It's tied already." Aisha replied nothing more. In this job, every response was a balancing act between courtesy and dignity. Chef Tony placed the seared filet on a rack to rest for the exact time. The sauce was poured into a silver boat, not a single drop staining its rim. The only other thing he wants. Tony shrugged as an excuse. Aisha didn't argue. She lifted the tray, a spotless white plate, centered with a glossy brown, cut a tiny shining silver boat, and deliberate space between everything as if the space itself had been requested. On her way out, a male guest draped his blazer over Aisha's arm. "Hold this for me, sweetheart." Aisha inclined her head, pointed at her name tag. "I serve table 7, sir. The coat check is just to your right." The man flushed. "I thought it's fine." Aisha cut in, gently closing the subject. Microaggressions, miscast roles because of skin color and uniform were reflexive battles she'd long trained for. Table 7 sat like a hollow in the room. Aisha set the Waitress at the edge label facing Victor and waited for the nod. He didn't look at the menu. He looked at the bottle eyes flickering with something between memory and gravity. A nod. Aisha cut the foil cleanly with the classical knife, wiped the neck with fresh linen, and drew the cork so slowly the soft pop sounded like a sigh. She poured a tasting sip, stepped back. Victor swirled, examined, color inhaled, held the wine in his mouth so long she heard the wall clock tick. "Acceptable," he said. Not praise, but at table 7 it meant green light. Aisha delivered the filet centered before him, sauce boat set without touching the plate, every demand satisfied. Victor pressed his knife gently into the cut, inspected the flesh. Perfect shade, rare edging toward medium rare, no garish pink at the core. He ate slowly, wordless. Aisha stood at precise distance, close enough to respond instantly, far enough not to intrude as presence. She returned to the kitchen with a nod. Tony exhaled good. In the trenches of service, a flawless dish wasn't glory. It was simply one not sent back. The rest of the dinner slid by on thin ice. No extra requests, no complaints, only a final order, fresh brewed black coffee. Aisha hovered at the barista's side, watching the machine flush filter-changed water measured at 92 to 94 degrees, leaving no excuse for stale brew. "Thank you," Victor didn't say. He simply didn't reject it. At table 7, silence was a word. When Aisha slipped the bill into its leather folder and stepped back, she watched Victor draw a black card sign in a jagged scrawl like an ancient rune and rise. He left, with even strides, never looking back. Only once, the revolving glass door completed its turn, did Aisha open the folder. The tip sat there swollen, like a dark cloud about to break, and then not. The sum was nearly half the total bill, driven mostly by the wine. Beneath it, 2 slanted words for the trouble. The dining room, if possible, hushed further. Brenda closed in. My God, never seen that before. Mr. Carter lingered, eyes measuring the night, the steps, the tone, the glances, the sheen of sweat at Aisha's temple. "Careful, darling," Brenda whispered, but this time the awe outweighed the scold. The paradox hung in the room. The man who terrified everyone had rewarded the one who didn't shatter. In the cramped staff room, Carter shut the door with a click and leaned on the lockers. "You just did what no one dares," looked him in the eye. But hear me with that man, power is a weapon. One call, one contract, and a life comes apart. Aisha stayed silent, but her gaze, humble, still held a glint of steel. I understand, but respect goes both ways. I wasn't loud, I just didn't erase myself. Brenda spoke then, no longer half joking. 2 years ago, there was a server named Tom. He said the soup was fresh from the pot when Mr. Blackwell called it cold. Next day, Tom's father manager at a supplier lost his job. Their company had just lost a contract. Rumor was a Blackwell subsidiary. No proof. But we knew. The room's temperature dropped 2 degrees. Goosebumps prickled under Aisha's sleeve. "Tell me, honestly," she asked softly. "Why is he like that?" Carter stared at the floor, then recited the story everyone at the Gilded Spoon knew, but few dared to voice his wife Lily and daughter Olivia killed by a drunk driver. The man was rich, had lawyers. Heavy charges turned light. The man who walked into court wasn't the one who came out. Since then, he's forced everything he can touch into submission: the angle of a dish, the brightness of a lamp, the number of lemon slices. The story didn't erase the raised brows or pointed reminders aimed at her. It only made the picture more complicated, not just a tyrant, but a wound walking in an expensive suit. Yet wounds don't grant the right to wound others. Aisha understood both truths at once, stretched taut between them like a string. That night, she carried the unthinkable tip home, dividing it into boxes on a sheet of paper medicine for her mother. Elaine, the electric bill part of Maya's tuition, $50 into the emergency envelope. Numbers less red, chest less heavy. But another stone stayed lodged. What did he really want? If Table 7 was a stage, Aisha knew she'd just forced the director to rewrite the script. And when a man addicted to control is forced to rewrite the script, what comes next? Right? Then her phone buzzed. Maya's message. "Sis, the doctor says there's a new treatment plan, but it's expensive. I'll explain tomorrow." Aisha leaned back, staring at the dark ceiling. The next storm was already gathering, rising from the space between a piece of meat and a silver sauce boat. A week after the Petru. For the trouble night, Aisha lived as if she were standing on the edge of a suspension bridge. A ringing phone made her heart jolt. Footsteps stopping by her locker sent half her soul flying. Mr. Carter had turned oddly gentle with her, the gentleness of someone recovering from a shock. "Stick to the playbook, all right." Brenda muttered little charms like a talisman smile. "More, don't be so sharp." It sounded caring, but Aisha knew it was just another form of tone policing. Soften up so no one can label you with an attitude. 7:30 p.m. Tuesday. The black rolls slid to the curb like the shadow of itself. Greg went to Carter and whispered he reserved Table 7, and Greg hesitated. He requested Aisha Ross. The dining room paused a beat, then shifted into a restless hum only insiders would notice. The summons, the phrase, flashed through everyone's mind like a fine wire of electricity. Carter pulled Aisha into a quiet corner. "Remember what I said. Be a machine. No jokes, no banter. Don't be clever." He hesitated a second, then lowered his voice. "I know some of what you carry every day, but right now you need to be safe first." Aisha nodded. She knew that some meant to the guard's lingering looks the time she was mistaken for coat check the sweetie in place of ma'am or miss. She didn't need a speech. She needed a straight line to walk. That line started at Table 7. Victor was already there. No scotch tonight, just a sealed bottle of water beside a highball glass stacked with clear ice. He looked up when Aisha stopped, his cold gray gaze slicing across the name on her pin. Ross. 2 syllables that landed like an order. "Good evening, sir. Starter, scallops, seared, exactly 60 seconds per side. Use a stopwatch if you must. Spinach wilted, but don't let it touch the scallops. I want a visible boundary. Water from an unopened bottle, 3, I repeat, 3 lemon slices, not 2, not 4. Ice in a separate glass. I'll mix it myself." Aisha wrote her script, neat as survey markers. "Main duck confit. Your cherry sauce is cheap? Tell Chef Tony to do an orange star anise reduction. Sour leads. If I taste more than a trace of sugar, it goes back." Aisha lifted her eyes. "Yes, sir. Did you hear me clearly? Every word, sir." On her way to the kitchen, a male guest tossed his coat check ticket into her hand. "Hold this for me." Aisha inclined her head and pointed to her name tag. I serve table 7, sir. Coat check is right down that way. He chuckled awkwardly, mumbling, thought. At the hall corner, a security guard paced slowly in her direction as if the itch to run a random check had started up again. Aisha had her employee badge out already reflexed by now. The kitchen door swung open and heat washed over her like a breaking wave. Chef Tony glanced at the order and arched a brow. Star Anise Orange Reduction. What is this, a cocktail bar? From the cellar. Marco peered up and rolled his eyes. We're doing bespoke sauces now. Aisha stood square. Chef, tonight he's testing me, which means he's testing the kitchen. I need perfection, not to please him, but to leave him no excuse. Tony held her gaze for a long beat. In it were the aggravation of an artist being forced into a commission, and the respect due someone who didn't flinch in a gale. Fine, he gritted. Fence the spinach for him, too. The kitchen became a lab. Aisha borrowed the bar's stopwatch and posted up by the seafood station. 1 minute, flip 1 minute. The scallops bloomed with that first caramel of proteins. Their faces turned deep gold like a freshly tightened drum. Spinach was wilted to the point of just pulling back emerald dry 2 pinches of flake salt between fingertips. Aisha had pantry cut exactly 3 identical lemon slices, checked each edge, and set them on their own dish. The water would be opened in front of the guest. The ice glass switched to large format cubes to melt slower. At the back station, Tony muttered the Orange Star Anise formula, fresh juice strips of zest, cracked Star Anise low heat, no sugar, a dot of salt to pull the sour forward. Plating was geometry, 3 scallops in strict formation, spinach mounted symmetrically opposite, and a band of white porcelain between them, a demilitarized zone per Victor's decree. Aisha inhaled, lifted the tray, and headed out. Table 7 always held a pocket of quiet. Aisha opened the water before Victor with the faintest hiss. She placed the lemon dish and the ice glass at a perfect hands triangle, then stepped back. The scallops landed. Victor lifted one with his fork, flipped it to inspect the sear, then nipped a leaf of spinach before touching the scallop as if to verify the fence worked. He ate the first bite very slowly, throat unmoving silence stretched like slow-motion film. No praise, no complaint. The plate came back clean. The duck confit arrived with a silver boat of reduction. Victor tipped the boat, let a single drop fall to the rim of the plate, and touched it with the fork's tip as a doctor might test a bead of blood. He closed his eyes for 1 beat. Good. 1 word, but in Table 7 grammar it ranked high. Aisha didn't exhale. She held tension like a drawn bow. Fresh black coffee. Aisha stood witness as the barista flushed the machine, and change the filter was poured, just as the steam thinned to a pencil line. Victor sipped, set the cup down, and signaled for the check. The leather folder shut. He rose and walked straight out, shoulders broad like a sail that needed no wind. Aisha waited for the revolving door to complete its turn. She opened the folder. The number couldn't have been more polite. It was lavish to the point of absurd. Again, a slanted line for the trouble. News spread like sugar hitting flame twice now. Some called Aisha the dragon tamer. Others whispered lightning rod so the rest of the dining room could stay calm. Aisha wasn't drunk on victory. She felt cradled by a storm, the way a storm sometimes strokes a tree's crown right before snapping it. The tip flowed into Elaine's medicine fund, Maya's tuition, and the in-case envelope grew a little. But a new hollow opened. What game was he playing, and which square was she standing on? In the weeks that followed, Victor funneled his trials straight at Aisha. Replace the water glass whenever it's half empty. The lily scent in the lobby ruins a wine's bouquet. The lamb chops are set at the wrong angle. Aisha translated like an interpreter too bright. Lower the dimmer by 5%. noisy. Politely reseat the family with kids across the room. Misaligned plating, an obsessive demand for symmetry. She became the still point in the whirl, and invisibly the shield for the whole team. Everyone breathed easier. Aisha breathed shallower because she knew she was carrying the room. On a late autumn rain night, the city blurred into watery brushstrokes beyond the glass. Victor was unusually silent. Aisha worked as though she had two heartbeats, one for service, one for counting undertows. Near the staff entrance, her phone buzzed. Maya's name lit the screen. Aisha scanned the room, everything in rhythm, then slipped into a narrow alcove and answered. "Maya, sis." Maya's voice was flooded with tears. "The doctor has a new plan for Mom, but $40,000 the insurance calls it experimental, so they won't cover it." The number pierced Aisha like a shard of ice. She leaned on the wall, bit her lip till she tasted metal. "I'll handle it. Don't tell Mom the amount. Let her keep some hope." She hung up, swiped away the tear at her eye, and froze. 20 paces away by the restroom door, Victor stood upright like a boundary line. His back was to her shoulders, tight enough to show the stitch lines in his suit. Aisha understood at once he'd heard. Every bad script flickered past discipline for answering a call on shift leverage of some kind, but Victor didn't turn. He walked straight back to his table as if nothing had happened. He was quieter than ever the rest of the night. The tip was still wildly large. For the trouble didn't appear, its absence did. That absence, fuller than any phrase, followed Aisha all the way home. 2 days later, a call lit her screen from a sleek downtown office, Catherine Price & Grant. An anonymous benefactor has offered and already paid for comprehensive counsel on your mother's insurance case. We can also explore malpractice if warranted. Aisha sat on the bed's edge as if at a cliff's rim. Who? Strictly anonymous. Catherine said, voice soft but firm. They gave one instruction. Do what's best for your family. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Aisha agreed, without remembering what she'd said. After she hung up, she laughed a sound without color. The universe is random sometimes, but randomness rarely knows her name. This time, it had her address. The offices of Price & Grant occupied a high floor glass stretching from ceiling to floor. Catherine Price, in a navy dress with a steady voice and eyes both sharp and warm, listened to Aisha as though she were chamber music. Insurance denials on the basis of experimental treatment are a familiar script, Catherine said, turning pages of the medical file. We've won plenty like it. 2 angles appeal the denial and force the company to prove their criteria for experimental. If necessary, we add a malpractice claim against the first facility for delayed diagnosis. Everything was laid out like a perfect dinner service, complete in sequence, each utensil in its place. Costs, Aisha began, but Catherine smiled, fully covered by the anonymous benefactor. We'll take the rest pro bono. The phrase anonymous benefactor rang in Aisha's chest like crystal after a strike. Anonymous, but not nameless, not to her. She stared at the glass where clouds seemed to drift backward. Something 2 nights earlier in a restaurant hallway had opened a door. Tuesday night, Aisha returned to table 7 with a secret tucked in her heart. The ritual ran smoothly. No Petrus this time, just a graceful burgundy that Marco introduced with relief. Victor ate more quietly than usual. At the end, when Aisha poured his black coffee and was ready to step back, Victor spoke, his voice low, gravelly like the mouth of a deep tunnel. This world's systems are designed to grind down the small. Paperwork is confusing on purpose. Rules are obscure on purpose. He looked past her shoulder as if speaking to the wall, but each word struck her. When someone gives you good advice, not using it would be foolish. Aisha stayed silent. The words were a cipher. They didn't say I, they said someone. They claimed no credit. They removed a brick from the wall between them, for a heartbeat so quick it might have been imagination. Victor's gray eyes softened. Not softened like sunlight through curtains, but like the hush before a deep sea. He stood, didn't look back. The leather folder opened only after the door's final spin held a generous tip, no message. This time the absence was meaning enough. That night on Maya's laptop, the one bought with Victor's tips, Aisha typed search terms buried far past page 10. Olivia, Lily, act. A faded law blog gray text on white recounted a failed bill to tighten penalties on drunk drivers. The names Olivia and Lily cracked the glass. The post mentioned an anonymous donor funding a small advocacy group. Aisha traced the name through public 990s, scrolled the lines of anonymous donor, and spotted a pattern: streams of money to programs, free legal aid for families, denied by insurers. Scholarships for law students drawn to public defense funds for malpractice suits against hospitals delaying diagnoses. Somewhere out there, a rich man had chosen to strike at the system, not just throw money at the surface. Aisha stopped typing. Victor Blackwell, the man who turned Table 7 into a symphony of control, might also be mapping the joints of the legal edifice, hitting where it cracked. At the Gilded Spoon, he fragmented meals to enforce order against a past he couldn't save. Out there, he might be breaking the hinges that slammed doors on people like Elaine, branded with 2 words: experimental. Night held still. Aisha sat long before the black screen, seeing her own reflection, a black woman in a white blouse. Catherine's email pinged, appeal submitted. Strong chance. A laugh and a sob twisted in her throat. She had once thought of Table 7 as a stage where she must hit every cue to avoid being tossed from the play. But another backstage was opening a parallel script where she wasn't only surviving, but rewriting. Next morning, arriving early, Aisha saw security blocking a new staffer. Badge, where you going, who let you in? The default suspicion made her skin prickle. She opened her mouth to step in, then stopped. Not from fear, but from knowing a sentence wouldn't fix it. The whole procedure had to change. She texted Carter, "Can we retrain the check-in process to avoid profiling mistakes?" "I've got some suggestions," Carter replied instantly. "Table 7's teaching you fast. Let's talk tonight." That evening, Victor asked for no separate sauces, no plate angles. When Chef Tony served the dishes, Chef makes it. Victor didn't object. When Marco offered the wine list, Victor asked instead, "Which bottle does Ross choose?" Aisha named a delicate Pinot. Victor nodded without pause. Small signs, but in the dictionary of Table 7 they were whole paragraphs. Aisha understood the ritual of trials had shifted into a ritual of trust, but she also understood something more vital. Anonymous is never random. Ask the right questions and the whole picture would emerge, both the wound and the man. And when it did, the story of Table 7 wouldn't be about a storm and a tree anymore. It would be about 2 people beneath the same sky learning how to move the wind. That night, before turning off the light, Aisha wrote 3 lines in her notebook. The system is tangled on purpose. Untangle with discipline, plus empathy. Small controls, plate angles. Lemon slices are medicine for the moment. Big controls, procedures, laws heal at the root. If someone opens a door for you, open another for someone else. She closed the notebook. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside her, a new season had begun. At the pre-shift meeting, Mr. Carter spread an A4 sheet across the bar. If anyone has suggestions for security guest interaction, speak up. Aisha raised her head. This was what she had texted him about the week before, retraining to avoid profiling mistakes. She hadn't planned a speech, just pulled 3 folded notes from her pocket. Fair ID checks only when there's a specific reason. Restricted area, unusual behavior applied to everyone. Don't use gut feeling as the standard. Clear signage, add a large coat check. Sign in the lobby to cut down on role mix-ups. Natural hair rule, spell it out in the handbook. Natural hair is acceptable. Remove vague terms like neat and proper. Brenda nodded. We're always saying, don't let it get messy, but we don't think how that sounds to different people. Greg flushed. I'll, hang the coat check sign today. Carter looked at Aisha a beat longer. We'll pilot this for a month. Aisha draft a snapshot training outline for me. The approval was casual, but Aisha heard the soft click of gears starting to turn. That evening, Victor arrived earlier than usual. The giant bouquet of lilies that always perfumed the dining room had been moved into storage, not because Victor complained again, but because Aisha had suggested at the meeting strong floral scents interfere with wine bouquet, replace with eucalyptus. Marco smirked. You just saved my whole cellar. Table 7 remained its quiet island, but when Aisha approached, something shifted. Instead of sizing her up like an inspection, Victor set his menu down as she stopped. Ross, he called her name first. Tonight, scallops as the chef makes them. 4 words, like a white flag planted. Aisha nodded, showing only professionalism. Yes, sir. All evening, no plate angles, no 3 lemon slices, no stopwatch. When Marco hovered asking Burgundy or Oregon, Sir Victor didn't answer. He turned to Aisha. Ross chooses. She suggested a lean Pinot with bright acidity light body. Let the duck's flavor speak for itself. A nod. In the gilded spoon, a table. 7 nod carried the weight of a speech. An hour later, trouble came from another table. A woman in a red gown, a city council member, glanced at Aisha and lowered her voice just enough for 3 tables to hear. Professionalism here is slipping. The staff's voice is heavy and the hair too puffy. The words pretended private, but struck directly. From across the room, Carter had already pivoted guilt in his eyes. With clients like her, the price of correcting could be a lost wedding contract. Aisha paused exactly 3 seconds. In those seconds, she measured confront or ignore. She chose the 3rd technique, set boundaries through procedure. She smiled and approached at the polite distance. Madam, if the volume at your table isn't comfortable, I can adjust the music. As for service, I assure you it meets the house standard. If you'd like to speak with a manager, I'll bring Mr. Carter right away. The smile was thin, the words not apologizing for existence, only affirming service. The councilwoman sneered. Before the tension thickened, a low voice rang behind Aisha Ross. She turned. Victor stood, bill-signed, coat half on. He didn't look at the red table. He looked straight at Aisha. Excellent service. 2 words in English, clear and cold, dropped like a seal. Then he left. The red table fell silent. From afar, Carter exhaled. When Aisha opened the billfold at the bar, the figure tilted the tiles under her feet again. No handwritten note. Only the printed slip excellent service typed in by the front desk at Victor's request before he left. Greg's hands shook. I've never been told to print praise before. Everyone understood it was Victor's way of intervening without shaming anyone but marking the standard for the room. That night, an email arrived from Catherine Price. The court has granted a temporary order requiring the insurer to cover treatment while the appeal is pending. The hospital will schedule Elaine next week. We are negotiating settlement. Aisha collapsed into a kitchen chair as the kettle whistled far away. She called Maya. On the other end, Maya wept like a child. Sis, Mom's going to get treatment. On the small wooden table, Aisha laid a hand on her notebook. The emergency line could finally close for a while. 2 days later, the pilot training began. Security staff practiced a new opener. Good evening, may I check your badge for the kitchen area no more? Hey, where's your badge? Greg hung the coat check sign at eye level. Brenda suggested rewriting the handbook. Don't use the word attitude in evaluations. Replace with a specific behavior description. Carter nodded. Measure what can be measured. The next Tuesday, when Chef Tony served scallops as chef makes them, Victor lifted his fork, paused a beat, and smiled fleetingly. So fleeting, Aisha wondered if she'd imagined it. He wasn't hunting for flaws, he was searching for flavor. And in the faint ring of cutlery, Aisha realized a crack had appeared in the stone mask some nights. The hardest act isn't control, it's release. At shift's end, Carter called Aisha into the break room. He set Table 7's billfold before her tonight's slip, along with a business card with no name, only the address of a non-profit building uptown. I don't know how deep you want to get. Carter set eyes on the ceiling as if embarrassed, but the person who gave me this asked me to put it in your folder. Aisha didn't need to ask who. She tucked the card into her wallet, her heart beating 3 times at once, anxious, doubtful, hopeful. The night closed with a sentence she added to her notebook. When someone surrenders the right to brag, it means they're serious about their kindness. And beneath it, she underlined twice, tonight. Table 7 smiled. The following week, Catherine Price sat Aisha down in a glass-walled conference room and laid a thick brief in front of her. First piece of good news. Catherine tapped her pen on the bold header. The insurer has settled full coverage of Elaine's treatment plan and related costs for 18 months. Second, the former hospital has agreed to resolve the malpractice branch for delayed diagnosis with a confidential payout and a commitment to new procedures. Aisha covered her mouth. Her voice broke into fragments. I thank you. Without the benefactor, Catherine smiled. They told me not to accept thanks, but I think you already know who it is. Aisha didn't answer. Her gaze drifted across the still water of memory, calm on the surface deep beneath. The good news poured into their home like sunlight through a window. Elaine, her mother, sat in the armchair, hands wrapped around a warm teacup. My girl, I keep thinking I'm dreaming. Maya clutched her sister. You've lifted a whole stone off my chest. Aisha smiled, then stepped alone onto the balcony, staring at the string of streetlights like punctuation marks. She knew there was one sentence still unsaid, one she had to say to the man at Table 7. Tuesday night, the Gilded Spoon was busier than usual. A TV crew was filming at the next table. Brenda whispered, "Keep the cameras away from 7. He hates it." Aisha nodded. She knew the rhythm of that corner better than her own breathing. When Victor's dinner had dwindled to coffee, Aisha stood tall, set the cup down, and didn't step back. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, voice steady. He looked up. Ross Aisha drew a breath. "I want to thank you for the things you don't sign your name to. Catherine Price is brilliant, but someone opened the door for us. I know it was you." Victor didn't feign surprise. He set his cup down, folded his hands, eyes searching past her shoulder as if for a wall to lean against. "A monster's reputation is useful," he said. "It keeps the world at bay." After Lily and Olivia, the noise was unbearable. Control here, he tapped the tabletop, is cheap anesthetic. Out there, he lifted his shoulders slightly, the small get crushed by a few lines of text. He paused. "You're the first in years who didn't flinch looking at me. You didn't show attitude, you set boundaries. And you understood no one should apologize for existing." Aisha didn't hide the tremor in her voice. "I understand some of the system's pain, my mother, the insurance, the suspicious looks, but I also understand some of yours. I don't excuse making others afraid, but I know why Table 7 has a spinach fence." Something flickered across Victor's eyes like the shadow of a bird's wing. Not pain lighter, closer to release. He slipped a hand into his inner pocket and placed a thick envelope on the table. Aisha moved to refuse. She didn't want money, but Victor said gently, not a tip. Inside was a dense proposal, Blackwell Foundation, operating outline. On the first page, 4 pillars: equal access to health and legal aid fund insurance appeals, mobile legal clinics in underserved counties, a support fund for timely diagnoses. Victims of drunk driving, Olivia Lilly scholarships, advocacy for stricter penalties and rehabilitation programs, not for revenge, but to prevent repeat harm. Service labor anti-bias training model handbooks, natural hair explicitly allowed, performance reviews based on behavior, not vague labels, legal defense fund for employees facing discrimination. Measurement and transparency, public dashboards, KPIs, tracking systemic change, not PR events. Beneath the 4 pillars, executive director vacant. Victor met her eyes. I need someone unafraid to name nonsense but calm enough to stand. Someone who won't lose dignity while serving. Someone who can see both a personal wound and a systemic injustice. Ross, will you take it? The room seemed to fade. Cutlery clinks sounded like raindrops on thick glass. Aisha looked at her hands. Small cuts from carrying trays looked toward the dining floor. Brenda, coaching a new hire to say Miss instead of Sweetie, looked through the kitchen door, Tony waving a thumbs up for another clean duck confit plate. Then she returned to the gray eyes. If I do, I need full professional authority to build my team, and the fund's numbers must be public. I won't be a cover for an apology. Victor smiled truly for the first time. Small but unmistakable. I'm asking you because of exactly that. Aisha nodded. I accept. The words landed between them neat as a signature. That same night after closing, Carter and Brenda sat with her in the break room. We're happy for you, Carter said, trying to mask the hollow forming already. Brenda tapped her shoulder. Honey, when you finish that sample handbook, send it to us first. I'll fight to get the restaurant to sign on. Aisha grinned. Draft one next week, I owe you both. On the way home, Aisha stopped at the hospital to sign intake papers for Elaine's treatment. Maya played soft music, wrapping an arm around their mother. Sis Maya asked in the parking lot, is table 7 finished? Aisha looked up at the sky. The city glowed like a net of light. Somewhere above, a man laid his phone down and called no one. Table 7 is never finished, Aisha said. But tonight it's quiet. Back home, she opened her notebook and wrote a new line. Small controls ease pain. Big controls fixing the system prevent pain. Then she drew an arrow from table 7 to the 4 pillars in the envelope. At the arrow's tip, she wrote one word, begin. On her first morning, Aisha stood before the tall glass of the new building, clutching the operating outline Victor had handed her the night before. A temporary sign at the door read Blackwell Foundation in a clean sans serif font. Inside, the air hadn't yet settled into an office smell, still paint fumes, and the clink of hammers from the setup crew. She set the envelope on the desk and drew a deep breath. If it began with table 7, then everything now had to be measurable, verifiable, and resistant to being swallowed by fine print. The first meeting included Victor Catherine Price, an accountant, and 2 advisory board candidates. Mr. Whitman, a construction magnate in his 60s, held Aisha's hand a bit too long. You're very articulate, he said. The word articulate landed like a velvet-wrapped blade. Aisha smiled. Thank you. Executives usually need clarity. Morning's microaggression neatly folded back in the word executive. She projected slides of the 4 pillars. Beneath each KPI's health and legal number of insurance appeals, filed 1 reduction in time from intake to treatment. Drunk driving victims increased, suspended sentences overturned, lower recidivism rates. Service labor number of adopted handbooks, natural hair behavior-based reviews, instead of attitude number of cases defended. Transparency public dashboard updated quarterly. We don't count ribbon cuttings or PR clips, Aisha said. We count changed procedures and people helped. Victor leaned back silent, as if listening to music whose rhythm he once knew, but had forgotten the lyrics. At the funding rules slide, Aisha lingered. No donations that carry veto rights. No selling naming rights where criteria can be influenced. Independent Advisory Board. Whitman smirked. You're heavy-handed. The fund is young. Aisha met his eyes. The younger it is, the cleaner it must be. After the meeting, Victor stayed behind. He pulled out a pen about to adjust, a slide heading. Aisha let him write one word, then gently slid the pen back toward him. I need you to trust the team. Fonts margins, white space fine. But if you rewrite priorities, the fund will just become another Table 7. For the first time, Victor set the pen down before making a real change. A small nod. Fair. Week 2. The core team formed. Catherine as legal counsel and pro bono network lead. Deshawn, former community clinic coordinator running the mobile clinic. Lynn Tran, data analyst, building the dashboard. Marisol, ex-restaurant HR manager leading service labor reforms. The first punch came quickly. The Insurance Association sent a warning letter, unauthorized interference in contracts overloading appeals, systems hinting at tortious interference. Aisha didn't flinch. With Catherine, she drafted a non-litigation strategy. Standardized appeal templates offer free training to civil groups. Release the templates publicly, so anyone could use them even outside the foundation. If our goal is process change, Aisha said, then is owning the process or freeing it into the commons more important. At the end of the table, Victor smiled faintly. She'd just taken away one of his old levers of control, and he realized he felt lighter. At the Gilded Spoon, Aisha's pilot security reforms bore fruit. Guards replaced "Hey badge" with "Good evening. May I see your badge for the kitchen area" for everyone, chef or lost VIP alike. Greg hung a bold coat check. Sign. Mistaken coatroom mix-ups dropped sharply. Carter told the staff, "From now on, reports don't say attitude. They describe specific behaviors." Brenda laughed. "We measure what can be measured." One night, a food influencer filmed a story. Drama Black Waitress snaps at Billionaire life changed. Aisha passed by just in time. She stopped, smiled thinly. More accurate, a worker set polite boundaries, a client learned trust, and a system got fixed. The next day's caption read, "Boundary setting is service." Month 2. The mobile clinic rolled out pitching a white tent in a church parking lot. A Honduran construction worker brought a stack of papers stamped experimental in red. Deshawn handed him the new template. Catherine called the coordinating nurse. 2 weeks later, treatment began. On Lynn Tran's dashboard, the first green dot appeared, Case 001 approved. Aisha stared at it like an exit sign glowing in a dark corner. That month, Whitman dangled an 8-figure donation conditioned on an extra board seat for his man and pre-approval of all press releases. Aisha thanked him, declined. He raised an eyebrow. "You're still green." Aisha. "The fund is green, but the mission is big. I won't let it become someone's nameplate." Later, Victor called her in, his voice gravelly. "You just turned away what most would call the lifeline of this foundation." Aisha held his gaze. "I just kept its soul." Silence, then a short stitch-like laugh. "Hire me as CFO then. Might keep me from itching to redline margins." In her own life, rhythms shifted. Elaine began treatment. Maya texted Aisha a photo of their mother's rare, unforced smile. That night, Aisha dropped by the restaurant. Tony slipped her a box of scallops chef's way. The guard greeted her by the book, no side glances, no stray suspicion. At a corner wall under a silver tray, a hand-written index card, "Good policy outlives good mood." V, no signature, no logo. Aisha folded it into her notebook. True, moods fade, processes stay. By late March, the media hammer fell. A tabloid ran a spread, "Tuesday Night Monster Founds Fund Image Laundering." It dredged up the old Tom rumor and hinted the foundation was PR. Aisha's phone lit. Carter careful. Catherine. Don't react too fast. Aisha convened a huddle. We don't tell a redemption tale. We show data. Appeal win rates shortened, wait times, hospital policies revised. And victims speak. Victor wanted silence, his reflex. Aisha placed 2 sheets in front of him, one blank for control, one full of metrics for release. If you don't speak, others will write for you. But we're not telling your story, we're telling the system's. Victor touched the numbers, then pulled a line. Small controls, I excel. Big controls, you've taught me. Aisha smiled. Then let me write the big, and you sign. 3 days before the foundation, Gala City Hall suspended the outdoor permit, citing security review. Aisha recognized the signature, the red-dressed councilwoman who once mocked her hair and voice. Politics, she thought. She didn't call Victor. She called allies the church, the community clinic, the restaurant association. Brenda rallied 5 owners to sign a letter and the Gilded Spoon. We'll host it indoors, open to the public, Carter declared. Menu chef's way. Victor was startled by the news' old instincts of control itching. Aisha countered with a 12-page operations plan, seating charts with wheelchair access, bilingual interpreters, open mic for 3 storytellers, a mother who won an appeal, a server under the new handbook, and Deshawn from the mobile clinic. Victor read it through, set it down, nodded. Do it. 3 months. Table 7 had walked out of its corner and redrawn itself as a system blueprint. But the night before the gala, Aisha still wrote in her notebook, "Tomorrow is not absolution. Tomorrow is a declaration." On gala afternoon, rain pattered like someone sound testing the glass roof. The Gilded Spoon had changed clothes, a small stage in the middle of the dining room, lights dimmed, so people shone brighter than the lamps. Brenda coordinated volunteers. Greg directed guests with the new signage. Tony finalized the menu scallops chef's way. Duck confit with orange star anise. This time, the kitchen signature, not a customer's demand. An hour before showtime, the tabloid dropped its second piece, Proof Blackwell Foundation, run by PR Machine. It showed a screenshot of an ex-assistant's email asking for more image budget spliced into a narrative of name laundering. The red dress councilwoman shared the link. We don't need oppressors' money. Aisha's phone flared like a flare gun. Catherine texted, We've prepped a legal if it's fabrication. Victor stayed silent, the old stone mask itching to return. Aisha stepped into the small prep room where Victor stood watching the swelling crowd through glass. Thinking of canceling, she asked flatly. Canceling is another control move. You shut the door, you kill the sound. Victor didn't turn. I've done that too long. If I go on stage, they'll tear me apart. Aisha shook her head. They don't need you to tear. They already have the myth. What they need is these numbers. She laid Lynn Tran's dashboard on the table. Appeal wins, shorter wait times, hospitals revising protocols. And they need it short, she added with a smile, your specialty. The doors opened. Seats filled not just white collar, but cooks in uniform, service staff, even rain-soaked jackets. Deshawn wheeled an old man to the front row. Elaine couldn't come, she was mid-infusion, but Maya was there clutching her sister's notebook like a talisman. Aisha opened the program. She didn't start with the foundation's name, but with 3 stories. Rosa, 58, whose experimental stamp was overturned now in treatment. Hassan denied rehab because of one unchecked box approved thanks to the new template. Janelle, waitress at another restaurant, told to straighten her curls for professionalism, now protected under a handbook that states, "Natural hair is professional." "We are not here to wash anything clean," Aisha said. "We are here to measure what people avoid, measuring how many days from form to treatment, how many workplaces rewrite handbooks, how many officers don't stop someone just because they look like kitchen staff lost in the lobby." The room chuckled softly, the laugh of recognizing a bad habit being named. The third storyteller, a young mother, trembled holding the mic. "They called my child's chemo experimental. I called the hotline. A woman named Catherine said, 'We're here.' Now my child is in treatment." Applause swelled like a wave. Aisha glanced backstage. Victor still stood like a post. She nodded slightly. He stepped out. No music, no intro reel. Bare hands, gravel voice. "I used to control the small lemon slices, plate angles, light levels. I thought if I did, the pain would lessen. I was wrong." He paused, letting silence say its part. There are larger things to control, fine print in contracts, the misused word experimental, the delays that kill. I used to spend money to stay quiet. Tonight I spend it to make noise in the right place. A breath. My wife and daughter's names are Lily and Olivia. I say them out loud so you don't tell their story for me anymore. On the left, the red dress councilwoman shot up, "PR stunt. He abused my staff." Cameras swung. Carter strode forward, calm. "Madam, this is a public event. If you want to speak, register like everyone else. If not, please sit so others can listen." Guards, freshly retrained, stood by, not crowding, not touching, creating an exit path like an open fire door. She kept live streaming, but the hall didn't shatter. For the first time, Victor didn't need a glare to hold the room. Process did. Aisha returned to the mic, steadying tempo. "We will not answer with argument. We answer with public data. Lynn Tran." Behind her, the screen lit with the dashboard, bars, lines, numbers. Case 001, 002, 003. Numbers that know no shame, no boasting, they simply stand demanding accountability. After the program, a hallway pause felt like a rest in music. Marco appeared with a tray of Pinot. Tony leaned close, looked table 7. In the familiar alcove, an old scene replayed to close forever. Scallops, as chef made them duck confit, as on menu, no custom sauce, boat, no lemon slices to count. Victor studied the plate, then smiled, not at the dish but at not needing to control it. Brenda passed, winking at Aisha. "See honey tonight." 7 eats like a person. Carter murmured, "New handbook, we signed it." Aisha's eyes blurred. "I know." On the bar wall, Greg had framed a policy sheet. Natural hair is professional. Beneath, in small print, Aisha had suggested, "Measure behavior, not labels." Night deepened. Maya hugged Aisha tight in the empty stage space, her hair damp, smelling faintly of pomelo. Sis Mom texted, "I'm proud." Aisha laughed. She looked toward Victor. He was talking with Deshawn about a second clinic van, with Catherine about pro bono networks. No longer in a shadowed corner, he stood in the stream. As the last guest left, the councilwoman was still live streaming outside, voice, sharp arms flailing. Aisha passed, paused half a beat. She didn't argue. She only said, "The public data's online. Read it, then continue." And she walked back inside where Tony shut the stoves. Brenda folded linens. Greg took down signs. Carter locked the safe. Marco counted glasses. A restaurant, no longer a theater of fear, but the backstage of a rewritten script. That night at her foundation desk, Aisha set 2 things side by side, Victor's index card. Good policy outlives good mood and the printed first quarter dashboard. She wrote across the top, small controls no longer needed. Big controls shared with everyone. Then she turned off the light. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, in the hush. Table 7 like a heartbeat steady for the first time in years. The morning after the gala, Lynn Tran's dashboard showed a new layer of data post-event inbound requests for help pouring in like rain after a storm. Boxes flipped from yellow to green with each approval. Timelines from application. Treatment visibly shrank. At 6:12 a.m., Deshawn emailed clinic van needs more Spanish-speaking volunteers. Packed schedule today. P.S. An old Mason has started physical therapy. Catherine replied instantly. Looping in friendly firms. Templates are public now. Anyone can use them. The Blackwell Foundation team grew 2 case managers, a communications coordinator, and a cybersecurity specialist after the tabloid tried to pry into Aisha's email for a PR playbook. They found none, only the public roadmap the foundation had published from day one. But the opposition's next move was shrewder, a request for information from the insurance coalition demanding all communications potentially interfering with contracts. Catherine smirked. They hate open process. Good. Let's open wider, publish a legal FAQ on appeals so everyone can use it. Attack us. Turn it into public good. While the foundation raced, another front appeared, a City Council Services and Labor Committee hearing on private foundations' impact on public policy. Chair Councilwoman Diane Reeves, a.k.a. Red Dress. The invite for Aisha to testify arrived just at the filing deadline, forcing the team into a sprint. Brenda texted need a cheering squad, will sit in back. Mr. Carter sent only, I'll be there. The chamber was tight, fluorescent cold. Reeves, entered in a burgundy suit, banged the gavel. We begin. Aisha sat in the front row. Catherine left Deshawn right. Victor slipped in 2 minutes late. Back row, no placard stone mask on. Miss. Ross Reeves eyed the paper, stressing Miss like a pin. You have 5 minutes. Aisha adjusted the mic. Madam Chair, my name is Aisha Ross, pronounced Aisha, not Isa. 3 measurable points. Application to treatment time cut 42% in cases we support. 2. Experimental, labels misapplied, dropped significantly after standardized appeals were filed. 3. 11 restaurants in this district have signed new handbooks. Natural hair is professional and conduct is described, not labeled attitude. Reeves cut in. You're very articulate, clear, but private funds meddling in public systems risks bias. Response. The word articulate sliced the air like a fine blade. Catherine lifted an eyebrow ready. Aisha gestured mine. Madam, the deepest bias lies in the fine print. We don't claim decision rights. We open process to the public. Every template step hotline is shared. Anyone can use them, even without our help. If there is bias, it leans toward transparency. Reeves clicked her pen. You're young. Do you know the game you're in? Politics isn't a restaurant. A low chuckle rippled from behind. Brenda hissed, Shh. Aisha stayed steady. Yes, madam. In restaurants I learned to set boundaries and still serve well. Here it's the same boundary is transparency, service is process. Community testimony followed. Deshawn told Rosa's story, his voice quivering like brass wire. A young server with tight curls stood shaking. My manager used to say my hair wasn't professional. Now the handbook says it is. I don't have to straighten anymore. In the back row, Carter nodded. Greg held up a hand-drawn sign, measure conduct, not labels. Then came rebuttal. Insurance reps cited clauses, flung jargon. Catherine unrolled a chart showing experimental as a backdoor denial. When Reeves tried to counter with social cost, Lynn Tran, invited up, flashed the dashboard delay costs in bed days productivity bills. Numbers spoke louder. Reeves looked down at her sheet, then at Aisha. "You're talented. Don't become a PR girl for a devil in a suit." Murmurs spread. Aisha calmly, "Madam, I'm no one's PR. I write process handbooks, and my name is Aisha." She repeated it slowly, not as defiance, but to put her name correctly in the record. After recess, the vice chair, a silver-haired councilman, introduced a draft, Service Workers Fair Treatment Ordinance 1 ban, hair discrimination. 2. Requires specific conduct in evaluations, discipline. 3. Fast-track complaints for service labor. It moved to drafting committee. Reeves frowned, but her gavel thudded train rolling. Outside, Reeves live-streamed about dirty money and laundered names. Victor slipped out a side door. Aisha stopped. He murmured, "You didn't need me in there." "Yes, I did," she answered. "You needed to hear your wife's and daughter's names spoken right, and to learn when to drop the mic so the community speaks." Victor chuckled wearily. Fair. That evening, Elaine texted Aisha less nausea today. "You looked beautiful in the blue dress on TV." Maya sent a photo of Elaine's small smile mid-infusion, the first unforced smile. Aisha printed it, slid it into her notebook beside Victor's index card. Good policy outlives good mood. A week later, State Senator Amelia Hart sent an invite requesting Blackwell Foundation's input on Olivia Lilly Act 2.0 at State Capitol. 2 pillars tougher DUI, victim family fund legal, medical microgrants. Catherine smiled. The names Olivia, Lily are back where they belong. Aisha looked at Victor. He touched the envelope edge, eyes heavy, then nodded. Time to change law for real. That night, as Aisha left the foundation, a strange email dropped subject a letter to Mr. Blackwell. From Andrew Cole. "I was the driver that night. I've been in rehab 7 years. I want to meet not for forgiveness, but to tell the truth I've hidden." Aisha froze in the dim office air conditioner humming. She forwarded it to Catherine first, then to Victor with one line, "The choice is yours. Whatever you decide, I'm here." Somewhere. Table 7 quivered like a plucked string. A new chapter was tuning. The state capitol's hallway was carpeted in green with high ceilings and warm yellow lights, a deliberate formality that made people speak more slowly. Aisha stood with Catherine Deshawn and Lynn Tran outside the Judiciary Committee hearing room. Victor arrived a few minutes late. Coat folded over his arm, dark circles rare beneath his eyes. "Andrew Cole," Aisha asked softly. Victor nodded. Catherine's reviewed it. "There'll be a facilitator if I agree." He paused. "I don't know yet." The chime sounded. Senator Amelia Hart opened the session today. The committee hears the Olivia Lilly Act 2.0. She looked straight into the camera. "A child's name and a mother's name to remind us law serves people." In the gallery sat Maya, hands pressed to her sister's notebook. Mr. Carter and Brenda were behind her, still in restaurant uniforms. Aisha testified first. She didn't tell her story. She told the data. "We've processed 146 appeals. 82 were approved after using the new templates. Average wait time fell by 19 days. Poor people don't have 19 days to wait." Lynn Tran showed a heat map underserved counties burning red. Deshawn spoke about the clinic van parked by a church and how bilingual volunteers cut the language barrier. Some senators nodded in agreement, others nodded noted. Then Victor. He stood, hands clasped, a deep breath audible in the mic. "My wife's name is Lily. My daughter's name is Olivia. I'll be blunt, for years I controlled small things at a restaurant. I turned pain into ritual. It cured nothing. New laws and procedures are what cure." He glanced at Aisha, a teammate's look. "I support this bill because it shifts control from any one person's anger to the justice of a system. A soft cough Reeves observing policy on a trip sat in the back row, live streaming in silence. A conservative senator asked, "Isn't this revenge?" Victor shook his head. "No, prevention. Tighten DUI with rehabilitation. And I want restitution. Not funeral money, but services attorneys, treatment on time done right. If that's revenge, it's revenge against indifference." When questions ended, Amelia Hart invited the Blackwell Foundation into the technical working group to draft provisions. A small step on paper, a big step out of the dark. After the session, Catherine handed Victor an envelope. Victim-Offender Dialogue Protocol. If you choose to meet Andrew Cole, we do it by the book Neutral Room, certified facilitator, no forced forgiveness, no cameras. Victor held the envelope like a hot coal. He didn't open it. "I'm afraid," he said for the first time. Aisha stood beside him. "You're allowed to be afraid, and you're allowed not to meet. No one wins if you perform." Victor nodded. Sometimes the best thing is to wait. Life outside the building didn't wait. A tabloid posted Table 7 hero director pulls six-figure salary, hinting she was profiting off pain. Marisol bristled. "That's market rate for an ED in this city, and she's doing 3 jobs. Aisha didn't argue in words. She published the pay bands for every role, including her own, plus the Independent Salary Survey Program, admin ratios, and annual audits. A data journalist tweeted, "This level of transparency should be standard." At the Gilded Spoon, Mr. Carter welcomed managers from other restaurants to learn the handbook. Brenda led the workshop. Don't write, attitude. Write, spoke loudly. At X distance, interrupted guests 3 times. Measure conduct. Hair natural is professional. Security. A new opening line doesn't lower safety, it lowers bias. Greg held up the coat check sign like a trophy. One sign saves a dozen awkward moments. One night, Aisha returned for dinner with Maya. Tony sent out scallops on the house chef's way. Victor wasn't there. Table 7 sat empty, candles still lit. Aisha felt at peace, not because there was no challenge, but because ritual was no longer needed to prove herself. 2 days later, Victor texted, "I want to meet Andrew Cole." Catherine set the protocol in motion. Neutral room, bare wooden table, 2 glasses of water, a salt and pepper facilitator named Janet. No recording, no pressure. You can stop at any time, Janet reminded them. Aisha didn't go in. This was Victor's space, but waited in the lounge beside a tall floor plant. The door opened. Andrew Cole entered, gaunt eyes like someone who'd stared too long into the bottom of a glass and now only looked into his palms. He sat, fingers interlaced. "I didn't come to ask forgiveness. I came to tell the truth. I chose to drive that night. I thought I was fine. I wasn't. I killed 2 people. His voice broke again and again. Victor said nothing, eyes fixed on a spot on the table. Each year, I wrote unsent letters. I thought about ending it, but my sponsor said, "Don't hide in death. Live to bear it. I want to bear it." Janet kept time. Victor set his hands on the table, knuckles pale. "How do you plan to bear it?" Andrew drew breath. "I run mandatory DUI trainings for repeat offenders, tell my story. I contribute to victim funds not to buy anything, just to pay a sliver of debt. And if you allow it, I want to say Lily and Olivia's names every time I teach." A dense silence. Victor looked to Janet. "I can't forgive, I'm not obligated to, but I don't want another body. If you live like this, live to bear, then do it." He stood, first, walked out, past Aisha without stopping. She didn't call after him. To let go of the small, you stand still. To hold the big, you stay silent. That night, Victor sent Aisha a single message schedule with Amelia to add a restoration clause to the bill and create a microgrant for victims pending appeals disperse within 10 days. Aisha replied, "Understood." The next week, the committee voted to advance Olivia Lilly 2.0 to the full chamber. Reeves kept grandstanding, but the numbers moved faster than words. Whitman emailed a second funding offer with strings aboard seat for my guy. Aisha responded formally, "Thank you. We accept only contributions without policy conditions." Victor forwarded with one line, "Appreciate the interest. I've just made a personal unconditional gift to the emergency fund." At the Gilded Spoon, Carter signed contracts with 3 district restaurants to deliver the Measure Conduct Not Labels training. Brenda taught, Greg updated signs, Tony put the Orange Star a nice dish on the menu as a good memory, no longer a demand. Security's new opening line became habit. One evening, when Aisha stopped by, a young guard smiled. "Good evening, Ms. Ross." "Have a great shift." Aisha laughed. "I'm a guest tonight." "Then enjoy your dinner." Elaine recovered slowly but surely. Maya started interning at the foundation, helping Deshawn schedule the clinic van. Boundary setting is leadership. Aisha joked and meant it for herself, too. She set hard cutoff hours, no email replies after 10 p.m. unless it was a medical, legal emergency. Marisol covered the labor program a few days a week. Life returned to a human rhythm. The night before the first full chamber vote on Olivia Lilly 2.0, Aisha sat alone in her office looking at Victor's index card and Elaine's smiling photo. On her desk lay a 90-second speech draft, short and sharp as a fillet knife. She wrote the final line, "Let's let go of the details we use to hurt one another, and hold on to the procedures we use to save one another." Outside the window, the city exhaled. Table 7, just a few blocks away, was likely empty, a single candle burning. No one needed to count lemon slices anymore. In the morning, they would count votes, and whatever the result, one thing had shifted control, had left a small table and taken a seat in the chamber where Aisha Victor and a whole community had set a chair for it. On the morning of the Olivia Lilly Act 2.0 vote, the State House buzzed like a hive uncapped. Green carpeted halls, guards scanning badges. Aisha walked beside Catherine, carrying a foam board with the dashboard printed. Deshawn hauled a box of files. Lynn Tran hugged her laptop. At a side entrance, a security officer held Aisha up longer than usual. "Do you have your invite?" Behind her, 2 white lobbyists were waved in with a nod. Aisha produced her letter and ID, an early morning microaggression like a thorn prick. She didn't flare, she kept moving. This wasn't the time to lose rhythm. In the caucus prep room, Senator Amelia Hart laid it out. "We've got numbers and stories. They've got budgets and doubt. Keep it short, sharp." 90 seconds. Victor arrived half a beat late, gray tie eyes more hollow than usual. Aisha handed him a tiny note. "No PR policy only." "Bullets." He nodded, tucking it into his breast pocket like a smooth stone. At exactly 10 Shoro, the full chamber convened. Reeves sat in the gallery, blazing in red. The tabloids dropped their last volley at 9:57 source. Blackwell Foundation purchased hospital data. Catherine leaned over to Aisha. "They're panicking," Aisha exhaled. "Good. We'll explain our data sourcing." Lynn cued the slide data from consented public records, anonymized, aggregated with IRB approval from a partner university. Public Health 101. Lynn smiled. Opening remarks, Amelia Crisp. "This bill isn't a sentence. It's a repair tighter DUI laws and Olivia Lilly microgrant for victim families' medical legal and a demand for transparency in the use of experimental." She turned to Aisha. Her turn. 90 seconds. Aisha stood at the mic, steady hands. "My name is Aisha Ross. I direct the Blackwell Foundation. We help families appeal insurance denials. When experimental is misused, poor patients wait 19 extra days for treatment. Some don't have 19 days. This bill puts the clock where it belongs, shortening wait times, opening processes, demanding accountability. It isn't charity, it's technique. She gestured to the screen. The dashboard lit time bars shrinking county maps, shifting red to pink. And when we protect service workers, natural hair is professional, measure conduct, not attitude. We cut the drag of bias at every system doorway. Exactly 90 seconds. She stepped back like drawing a knife clean from a fish, sharp, precise. Then Victor. He faced the mic like an old adversary. I spent years controlling lemon wedges and plate angles. It saved no one. Now I want to control what matters. The fine print in contracts, the procedures when hospitals delay diagnosis. I support this bill because it puts control in the hands of justice, not my anger. He paused half a beat. My wife was Lily. My daughter was Olivia. I speak their names so you don't tell their story for me. A murmur swept the chamber. Reeves raised her hand for a citizen comment slot without registering. The chair denied it. She went, leave instead. Private money shouldn't write public law. Comments flooded in. Reading the dashboard right now, lady. Show us the numbers. One user. My kid just got approved thanks to the template. Debate ran 2 hours. Opponents repeated costs burdens. Supporters stuck to transparency time. Twice, Catherine rose to clean statutory wording. Deshawn described pitching a clinic tent behind a church like an ER. Lynn answered a skeptical senator on anonymization day, one epidemiology de-identify aggregate. No one exposed. Vote time. The electronic board flickered ye, nay, populating slowly. A centrist conservative pressed ye after seeing the data set. An urban rep added ye with a writer. Expand DUI rehab support, echoing Victor's late-night email. A few no's scattered. Result passed in the lower house by a slim margin headed to the upper chamber. Applause broke not for victory but for progress. In the hall, reporters swarmed. One asked Aisha, "Do you fear the foundation will forever be branded a whitewash?" She smiled. Reputation is what others call you. Data is what we do. Another turned to Victor. Do you apologize to staff you once controlled? He hesitated half a beat, then I'm fixing it through process. And I'm learning, not polished. It landed like a bolt tightened to the right torque. By afternoon, the Olivia Lilly microgrant inbox had 50 applications in 4 hours. Aisha triggered fast-track tight criteria, clear checklist disbursement within 10 days. Marisol proposed an advanced stipend for lost wages while caregiving. Can we measure it? Aisha asked. By workdays missed, Marisol said. Do it? Aisha nodded. That evening, the Gilded Spoon ran as usual. No gala, no cameras. Mr. Carter taped the natural hair policy to the staff board. Brenda tweaked the handbook so attitude could never slip back in. Greg unveiled a coat check sign with LEDs. No one lost again. Tony folded duck confit with orange anise into the menu proper, a footnote suggested by a former guest. Everyone knew who, no need to print the name. A late-night call from a familiar hospital. We're still labeling this new drug experimental. Catherine low-voiced the bills in the upper chamber, but the microgrant covers 10 days. Aisha approved an emergency payout, then fired a letter with data attached. The public dashboard will record this and will name the practice, not the person. 36 hours later, we reviewed approved. A small win on the runway. Not with cheers, but with habit. That night, Andrew Cole emailed I taught my first DUI class. I said Lily and Olivia's names. I didn't ask forgiveness. I counted each face listening, hoping one turns back before it's too late. Victor forwarded to Aisha 4 words only. Doing the work. She replied, keep going. Aisha came home late. Elaine slept meds, easing better now. Maya opened the door, hugged her, slipped a paper into her hand. Internship offer, Senator Hart's office, summer. Oh, Aisha hugged back. Take it. Write laws from inside the room. In that moment, she realized Table 7 had migrated. From a restaurant corner to chambers, clinics, dashboards, spaces with chairs, for many at once. Before bed, Aisha opened her notebook, wrote one line, "Victory isn't never being attacked again. It's when attacks are forced to collide with data." She turned off the light. Outside, street lamps cast warm chalk streaks across the pavement. In the dark, the wall clock ticked steady like a fillet knife on bone, clean and true. Tomorrow, the upper chamber. But the path was cut. 6 months later, Olivia Lilly 2.0 became state law. The signing was brief, no balloons, no confetti. Amelia Hart signed, set the pen on the final line, and turned to Aisha. Now comes the hard part, implementation. Aisha smiled. The hard part is our part. That very day, Lynn Tran's dashboard added a new tab, Compliance Watch, tracking how hospitals apply the experimental label, what wait times look like, who earns stars for doing it right, and who gets invited to a meeting. The Blackwell Foundation grew but didn't bloat. Aisha kept headcount disciplined. Marisol expanded the service labor program to hotels and salons, natural hair, written straight into contracts. Attitude disappeared from review forms, replaced with behavior checkboxes. Deshawn ran a second clinic van. Schedules were so packed they partnered with churches and community centers to set weekly fixed sites. Catherine trained more young lawyers, turning the hotline into a real network. Victor learned a new habit, giving up the chair. In meetings, when the itch to tweak fonts or margins flickered, he stepped back. Once his pen froze at a line reading "Foundation" name on gala backdrop. "Make the logo smaller," he said, then laughed. "The big thing needs to be bigger than my face." He stopped showing up at the Gilded Spoon every Tuesday, not out of severing, but because he didn't need to. When he did drop by, it wasn't at Table 7, and there were no demands. Brenda teased, "You've put me out of a job in Table 7 translation." Carter just nodded, the kind of nod with sky in it. One afternoon, Andrew Cole sent an internal, not public video of him teaching a DUI class. "Your wife's name is Lily, your daughter's is Olivia. I say their names every session, not to beg forgiveness, to remind myself." Janet, the facilitator, reported that a recovery group had invited Victor to speak about loss, not as an inspirational speaker, but as a survivor. Victor went sat on a folding plastic chair and spoke less than the others. Afterward, he texted Aisha one line, "Turns out, letting go is a skill you have to practice." At the Gilded Spoon, the new handbook became a model case study. Restaurants across the district came to learn. Greg showed off an automated coat check kiosk, no more misidentifying staff. Guests check their own. Security shifted to the language of invitation instead of blockade. "This way, sir, ma'am." Tony hosted an open kitchen day. Guests watched technical language turn into the language of flavor, a soft kind of transparency. Elaine responded well to treatment. On good days, she sat on the balcony with tea, watching Maya prep public policy grad school applications. "I want to do policy data," Maya said. Aisha laughed. Dashboard genes run in the family. In the kitchen, Aisha taped up a note. "Boundary setting is leadership." Not to preach to others, to remind herself. She set work hours, delegated more, and learned to say no to interviews, shopping for drama. "We don't tell redemption stories," she'd say. "We tell how to fix process." Reeves, she still live-streamed. At one forum, she recycled the old line, "Dirty Money," in a fresh foundation suit. That time, a screen behind her lit up with "Compliance Watch." Green dots popped live. A reporter asked, "Do you have any data to the contrary?" The live stream went quiet for a few beats, then slid to another topic. The market for words now had arrival numbers. One Tuesday, Carter called Aisha. "If you're free, drop in for dinner. Table 7 misses you." Aisha came with Maya. Brenda sent out scallops chef's way, no spinach fence, no stopwatch, just a perfect sear. A slender Oregon Pinot Marcos pick. Across the room, Victor sat with Deshawn and Catherine talking about a third clinic van. They laughed ordinary laughter. As Aisha stood to leave, Victor passed by and paused a beat. Ross. He nodded. Nothing more. Enough. The next day, Hart invited the foundation to the first Olivia Lilly Scholarship ceremony. 5 public interest law students, 3 community nurses, 2 service labor organizers. In her remarks, Aisha didn't talk about herself. She said, "There was a waitress who set a boundary, a man who learned to let go of the small and a restaurant that rewrote its handbook so no one had to apologize for their hair. The rest is process, and you're going to write it." The hall laughed and applauded. Victor sat in the third row, quiet, one hand resting on the chair, less tense now. Thank you notes arrived, daily photos of patients having IVs removed, a hand wiping sweat from a brow in a waiting room, crews of restaurant staff holding up the new policy sheets. So did a tax and insurer sued the foundation for unlawful pressure. Catherine was calm. They'll lose public interest. Lynn showed dashboard views spiking after each smear. Marisol reported places adopting the new handbook saw fewer internal complaints and lower turnover. "We can measure it," Aisha said, "and once it's measured, no one can take it back." On year's end, the foundation held a small team party, no gala, cheesecake and a fruit platter. Deshawn told of an elderly woman who hugged him, sobbing after her radiation was moved up by 8 days. 8 days sounds small, but to her it's a spring. Lynn raised a glass of water. To charts that barely budge because it means soon has become standard. Catherine grinned. A toast with the handbook. Victor arrived last and laid an envelope on the table, an unconditional grant for next year with one line, "Good policy outlives good mood." Everyone cheered. Old line new again. Aisha stepped onto the balcony, the city glowing like a giant circuit. Maya texted Mom wants duck confit for New Year's Eve. Tony replied to Aisha right away, "Chef's way." Aisha smiled. Chef's way had come full circle from a demand of control to a credo of respect for craft. She opened her notebook. On the last page of the year, she wrote, "Setting boundaries doesn't oppose service, it protects it. Transparency isn't propaganda. It's a technique against noise. Letting go of the small to hold the big is a skill learned for life." She closed the book. Before going in, she looked toward the building that housed the Gilded Spoon. In her mind's eye, Table 7 was still there, just another table candle, steady no one, counting lemon slices. It hadn't vanished. It had transformed into clinic vans, into dashboard snapshots, into policies on the wall, into YEA votes pressed on a floor. On New Year's Eve, 3 women, Elaine, Aisha, Maya, gathered around a small table. Duck confit perfumed the room with orange star anise. Elaine took a bite, eyes bright. "Chef's way," she said, teasing. They laughed. Outside, fireworks burst into blooms of light. In the flashes, Aisha thought of the old nights, sweat in the kitchen for the trouble on a bill, the feel of being priced by a glance. Then she thought of now microgrants moving a law past a handbook, changed natural curls gleaming under evening lights, names pronounced correctly. This story doesn't need a pseudonym anymore. Aisha Ross, black woman, former Waitress Foundation director, set a boundary at the very center of power's stage. Victor Blackwell, a billionaire who once used small control as anesthetic, learned to hand big control to justice. And the Gilded Spoon, once a theater of fear, became the backstage of a new script measure conduct don't label, where Chef's Way isn't just a dish, but a stance toward the work and toward each other. If you ask for the lesson, Aisha would say empathy isn't a soft feeling. It's a system-fixing skill. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's holding still when your hands want to shake, saying your own name, right, naming the thing right, and counting what's worth counting. The rest, the noise. The gloss, let the candle at table 7 handle that. We've got bigger work. Aisha showed that setting boundaries doesn't fight service, it preserves dignity. Victor proved that letting go of the small to hold the big can change a whole system. From dining room to chamber floor, from for the trouble to natural hair is professional. The story closes, but the walk toward justice keeps going. Question for you: when you're facing a power-imbalanced moment, which boundary will you set first? And what are you willing to release to hold something more important? If this story resonated, tap, like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe with the bell on so you don't miss more stories about courage, empathy, and how we fix what isn't right.